Most of the time, when you run a command in the Linux shell, you have to wait for the process to finish before you can do anything else. This is because the command is being run as a foreground process. All the processes we have worked with up to this point have been foreground processes. Problem is, only one foreground process can be running in a shell at a time. As an example, let's run a funny little utility called xeyes. The eyes in the window follow the movement of the mouse. Notice, even though I can type in the shell, the commands won't be executed. In this case, the command only executes once I quit the xeyes program. While you can only have one foreground process, you can have multiple background processes running at the same time. To start a process so that it runs in the background, add an ampersand to the end of the command like this. Notice that xeyes is running and I can continue to type in the terminal. We can also move a currently running process from the foreground to the background and vice versa. To see this in action, let's run the xeyes program in the foreground again. We can suspend the process using Ctrl-Z. This essentially pauses the process. It still exists, but it isn't running. It has stopped. Notice that the eyes aren't following the mouse anymore. We can see that it is suspended using the jobs command. We see that xeyes is listed as a job in the shell, but it is stopped. To move the process to the background, we can use the bg command. The xeyes program is now listed as running, and the eyes follow the mouse. If we wanted to move the process back to the foreground, we could use the fg command. Since it is now a foreground process, we can't interact with the shell anymore. Let's suspend the process again so we can try something else. Now, I'm going to run another process, in this case xclock, in the background so we can see what the output of the jobs command looks like. Xclock ampersand. Here's our program. Jobs. Notice the xclock process is running and the xeyes process is stopped. Also, you can see that there is a plus next to the xeyes process and a minus next to the xclock process. The plus means that when we use the fg and bg commands, they will operate on the xeyes process. If we want to use them on a different process or job, we can specify the job number. In this case, xclock is job 3. So we would use the following command to make it a foreground process, fg3. Notice that it is now in the foreground and I can't interact with the shell anymore. Job control in the shell will become more important as you use the shell more and more. I tend to use the shell for most of my work and primarily ignore this start menu. Before I finish the video, I do have one quick tip. You will often find that some GUI programs can generate errors. When you run them from the command line, all of those errors will be displayed in the shell you use to start the process. I recommend that you redirect the output, both standard out and standard error, of these processes to dev null when you start them. That way, all of the output will be kept out of the shell.